All right, so let's go to our inequalities notes that we started the other day. So I'm going to open those guys up, and these are things that we did on our first day. So if you recall, we just first started off with which number is larger, okay, and getting used to the different symbols. And we had our key up top there. And then after that, we were graphing them on the number line. And we also today, as a warm-up, did some of those equations. And so now we are going to merge the worlds. So the goal today is to be able to solve these inequalities, which look a lot like the equations we did, but now we're going to solve it not an equal sign, but an inequality sign. Now, before we do that, remember all the graphs that we did either had an open circle or a closed circle. When you have your equation, you want to look for the variable and look at the sign. So the first thing we're going to do is decide whether or not the circle is open or closed for each of these. And that has to do with whether or not it has an equal sign underneath it. So for example, this first equation, there is no equal sign underneath, so that is going to be an open circle. Okay, and that's due to the sign. Doesn't matter which way it's facing, it just matters if it has an equal sign underneath it, like the second one does, which makes that a closed circle. So I'm just trying to determine whether or not the circle is going to be open or closed. So next, we have an equal sign underneath that is closed. And the bottom one will be open because there is no equal sign underneath. So I would just quickly figure out whether it's open or closed before I even start the problem. Okay, any questions on that? Okay, because then the next thing is whether or not I'm going to have to flip the sign when we get through the equation. So for example, this sign is a greater than sign. Sometimes you have to flip it and make it less than. The reason you would have to flip it has to do with the variable and whether or not the variable has a negative in front of it. If it has a negative, you have to flip it at the end. If it's a positive, you do not have to flip it. So for example, the top one, when I solve that, yes, I'm going to have to flip the sign because I have negative b over 2. The second one, no, I'm not going to have to flip that sign because it's positive 1/2. So it has to do with the number in front of the x, the coefficient of the x. If it's a negative, we flip. If it's not a negative, we don't. So for the next one, that is a positive 3. We are not going to flip that. It's a positive number. And the next one, that's a negative 7. So yes, we are going to have to flip that. So when you first look at the equation, you just want to determine an open circle or closed circle, and are we going to have to flip the sign? And then we'll start working on the problem. So let's do that for problem 2. Okay, when I start problem 2, I'm going to immediately look at it and I'm going to say, okay, this would be a closed circle. I know it's closed because of the equal sign underneath that. So it is a closed circle. I also know from the equation, I am not going to flip the sign. And that's because the number in front of x is positive. So before I've even done any work, I already know I have a closed circle and I don't have to flip the sign. So now let's solve this. When we solve it, just like your equations we did before on the board, trying to get x by itself, So I'm gonna subtract 4 from both sides. And just like we were doing before. So I have 2x on the left side. Now my sign is not an equals, but it's a greater than or equal to. And 24 minus 4 is 20. And now I'm going to divide by 2. Let's cancel. And I get x is greater than or equal to 10. That's my answer. So now to graph that, I go to 10. It's going to be a closed circle. Remember, because it's an equal sign. So on 10, I have a closed circle. And I want to shade numbers greater than 10, which means going to the right. All right, any questions yet? All right, well, then let's do problem number 3. All right, what do you think? Open or closed circle? Open, very good. It is going to be open because there's no equal sign. Okay, so it is an open circle. How about the sign? Are we going to flip it or not? All right, we're going to flip because we have a negative in front. Okay, so we are going to flip the sign. Okay. All right, so now let's start to solve that. So just like our equation before, we're going to distribute that -3. So I have -3p plus 1. And then that's greater than -18. Okay, so I distributed, plus 1. I have to distribute, right? Yeah, thank you. It's -3p minus 3. Right, to distribute that -3. So -3p minus 3 is greater than -18. Okay. Now, it's like the problem above it. I'll add 3 to both sides. So I have -3p on the left. Greater than -18 plus 3 is -15. And now I'm going to divide both sides by -3. So my -3's cancel. I get p on the left side. On the right side, -15 divided by -3 is 5. But don't forget, we are flipping the sign. So now instead of a greater than sign, we want less than. So our answer is that p is less than 5. Okay, I had to flip the sign because I divided by a negative. Okay, so if that coefficient is negative, we have to flip the sign at the end. So when I graph this, it's going to be an open circle at 5. Okay, because there's no equal sign. And I'm going to shade to the left because I want stuff less than. All right, next one. All right, first, open or closed circle. No equal sign, so it will be open. So it is an open circle because there's no equal sign. Are we going to flip the sign? No, we are not going to flip the sign because the coefficient is positive. So we don't flip the sign. All right, so now let's solve this thing. But that is ugly looking because of the fraction. So we could get rid of the fraction by immediately multiplying everything by whatever the fraction is. So multiplying everything by 2. So I'm going to do 2 times everything. And what happens is this 2 and that 2 will cancel each other out. And so I just have b, but I have to distribute the 2. So I did 2 times that. I have to do 2 times the 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. And then 2 times -1 is -2. Now I want to get b by itself, so I'm just going to subtract 6 from both sides. So I get b greater than -2 minus 6 is -8.
Why did you -3?
Say that again, please.
Why did you -3?
From right here,
Yeah.
we could have done it that way. Okay, so you could have subtracted 3 first and then multiplied by 2, and we should get the same answer. So if you want to try that on your own, go right ahead and do that. We should get the same answer. Yeah. Yeah, all right. Can I touch it?
Oh, no,
Okay. All right, so we want to open circle at -8. We want numbers bigger than -8, so we're shading to the right. All right, why don't you guys take a minute, try the last one, and then we'll go over that in just a minute. All right, so let's take a look here. First, I know it's going to be a closed circle because of that little equal sign. And I know that I'm going to have to flip the sign because I have a negative coefficient. So I'm going to keep that in mind and I'm going to solve it using a little algebra. So I will subtract 7 for both sides. And so I have -7x is greater than or equal to, and -56 minus 7 is -63. Now I'm going to divide both sides by -7. So I get x. Don't forget, I have to flip the sign. So x is less than or equal to, and -63 divided by -7 is 9. And so my answer is x is less than or equal to 9. So closed circle at 9. I want stuff less than that, so I'm going to shade to the left. All right, any questions?